Well, hello everyone. Hope everybody's doing all right. Welcome to another episode of Embrace Live. We took a bit of a break last week because I don't know if you noticed the foot the ball. Mark, I think is going to foot the ball. He's nodding on my other monitor here. There's a bit of a competition going on in England. We're obviously doing amazingly well, and they did do amazingly well. Didn't quite work out where we wanted it to go, but absolutely immensely proud of the whole entire England team, and it's just great to see the nation coming together and so on like that. So we took a bit of a break for the football, but we're back, and this is an opportunity to start a new series. So if you've been tuning in regularly to Embrace Live, and if you haven't really, just to let you know that my name's Dave Dixon. I'm part of Embrace Church in Darlington, part of the leadership team there, and I serve over there, which is great, and I love it. Well, that sounds bad, doesn't it? I said a but there. I didn't really mean a but. But what we're going to do is focus, actually, on much wider than Embrace Church. So there's only one church, really, and that's a church with a capital C. And there's lots of different flavours. I've talked about that previously and for many times. And so I'm really pleased that we're actually in this series that's going to come up. We're going to focus on lots of my friends, good friends, particularly a good friend tonight, Mr. Mark Miller, or Miller the Vicar, as I like to call him. And we will bring Mark into the show in a moment. Did you like that hand gesture just there? It's kind of beckoning forward. Yeah, okay. And we'll bring him in, and obviously we're going to start talking about lots of people who are involved in leading worship in churches of different flavours, like I say. So I'm really pleased. I've known Mark for many years, and he's a really good friend of mine, and hopefully you'll say the same when he comes on there. I just want to we're just going to have a chat about actually what does it mean when to lead worship, and it's starting to get into some of the kind of practical kind of stuff as well, really. So this is going to follow on from the My Story series that we did, which is all about how people came to know and make a decision to follow Jesus themselves. So we'll try to avoid the churchy speak again, so if you're catching this live, great, fantastic, or you can head over to our YouTube channel. But it's really what we want to do, as always with these, is make them interactive. And I just want to say hello to Mike and Margaret and Sue for joining us already, and Bill. Great, fantastic. So we've got Sue and Bill joining us. Wonderful people. But help us out by spreading this link to obviously your social media channels and things like that, really, because we want it to go far and wide, and we want to kind of just kind of respond to your questions, really. So we're ready, primed, waiting for your comments and questions as we go through, as always. We're going to hear from Mark, and we want to respond from some of these really difficult questions. I want to encourage you to pause really difficult questions for Mark, because he's a vicar and he knows all things. All right, his mouth is open at this moment in time as I'm looking on my monitor. So the harder the better, because he's one of these people who wears a collar normally, a dog collar, and I can see him rushing already for his books and things like that. Absolutely, for all these wonderful answers and so on. So welcome to Liz as well, who's also with Mike and driving apparently. I hope you're kind of staying safe while you're doing that. So it's a bit of an introduction. I just want to play this opener for the Worship Leader series, and then we'll bring Mark into the show. Here we go.
Praise the Lord, all my soul. Forget not what he's done. Forget not what he's done. Praise the Lord evermore. He surrounds you with his love. Surrounds you with his love. Yeah. He surrounds you with his love.
So I just want to reassure you, first of all, that this is a series not just for musicians, all right? We might get a little bit kind of techie and on occasion, and we, as musicians, we like to talk about, the music equipment and so on that we use. But I really want us to be much broader than that, really. I want to be accessible, and everybody, we recognise that worship is a lifestyle. First of all, let's just say that, according to the Bible, obviously we're reading the Bible that worship is a lifestyle. Everything that we do should be in thankfulness as a response to what God has done and what God is doing for us, and not just because of what He does, because we love Him, we express it in lots of different ways. But then, obviously, we worship in church is a lot to do with, not the only thing, but with music and expressing creativity and so on. I'm going to bring Mark in now because, like you say, I want to introduce him. He's a really good friend of mine. Let me just bring him across. Mark, welcome. How are you doing?
Hi, Dave. It's great to be here. I'm doing... So I had this brilliant answer to this question. How are you doing? The headlines are great. The details are causing some challenges.
I love it. Love it. But the headlines are great generally.
The headlines are great. Jesus is on his throne. I'm doing all right. Yeah, we're good.
Brilliant. I like the way that when I encouraged, obviously people to ask really difficult questions, that I could see on the monitor you went and grabbed your big, thick book. I couldn't quite make out what it is, but does it have all the answers? Because that'd be a really good, useful book to have.
It is my go-to Erdman's commentary on the complete Bible. It's like the biggest, thickest book that I own.
So the bigger the thicker the book, the holier that you are. Is that right?
Well, no, it probably just refers to me with bigger and thicker.
I love it. So, Mark, I've known you for a good number of years now, you are a really good friend, somebody I admire and respect a lot. And, again, I just want to say thank you for supporting me in my kind of walk, in life journey, ups and downs and all that. You've been there, certainly. When I found stuff tough, and also the good, the good times as well. So, and I did have the privilege of, being part of Stockton Parish Church for a while, before kind of heading over to Embrace and kind of helping support the church there and help develop the church and plant that. So, why don't you just tell us, Mark, just a little bit of who you are, and do that first then, because I know that you're not wearing your dog collar tonight.
No, I don't have like pajamas with a dog collar. I guess I've worn my dog collar less in lockdown. If you give me the dress code, I'd have put it on for you tonight. Dave, let me also just say how much I love you, and I think you're great, and I think this is just brilliant, and I have been delighted to see your journey at Embrace. I didn't want you to leave SPC, but you left in such an honouring and a wonderful way to go and do kingdom stuff. And that's, as a church leader, as a pastor, as a vicar, you want your people to grow and do kingdom stuff. And so who am I? I'm Mark Miller. I had my birthday yesterday. I am not as young as I was the day before that. I grew up in Scotland, so football has been very interesting for me lately. I was 9 when I left Scotland, moved down south to Northampton, and was there for about 5 years, and then moved up to the northeast. I went to school at Egglescliffe. I joined in 1984 in the 4th year, so people can do some maths and work out how old I am. I lived in Middleton, St. George, and I've been around the northeast most of my life. I worked across Bishop Auckland Way for a little while, worked at a school there for kids with emotional and behavioural difficulties, was a social worker, got a job working for the military out in Cyprus as a social worker, actually.
Right.
And that was pretty cool. That was good. My daughters were born out there. So I'm married to Beth. We have Josh, who's 20, and Molly and Ellie, twin girls, who are 17. In Cyprus, when you have twins, they say, 2 houses to build. And then I came back to the UK from Cyprus in 2005. Did a career change and was a photographer for a while. And during that, responded to a call that had never really left me to become a vicar. So I trained at Durham University and then went to Stockton Parish Church, and I've been to Stockton Parish Church ever since.
Yeah, fantastic. The family all okay? Haven't seen them obviously for a while. Just
yeah, absolutely. Family are good. Let me see what's the highlights. So my girls are in the middle year. They're 2 years at Middlesbrough College, so they're in the middle summer. Josh is heading off for an RAF aptitude test at the end of this month.
Right.
So he does the computer-based aptitude test to see what he might be able to do. and so we're all okay.
Great. Obviously, we've encouraged already the difficult questions, so we thought we'd jump straight in there with a really tough one from Liz Connolly, which you know, and so let me just pop that on the screen, even though it's Mike who's asking the question on behalf of Liz, but there you can see, Liz wants to know, have you had a bacon sarnie today? The importance of LiVE.
Liz, I haven't had one today. By that, so those who don't know, Mike and Liz were in SBC for a little while as well. And I guess one of my phrases would be, Jesus makes everything better. So does bacon.
Yeah.
Jesus is clearly the most important one, but bacon makes most things better as well.
Yeah. So we're getting a lot of love of that already. I can see, people are kind of sharing the emojis and hearts and things on that. That's great. So, that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we are, interactive, so please do comment and ask your questions, and we do want to respond to that as we go through, as well as, obviously we'll intersperse those kind of questions with the kind of chat that we're having. What does the vicar do at SPC, Mr. Miller?
What does the vicar do?
Yeah.
What does a vicar do at SPC versus what does a vicar do elsewhere? Vicar is a church leader.
Yeah.
People in Church of England terms, we have some confusing titles in the Church of England. My technical title is actually priest in charge,
okay.
But most people get that. I just think that's really confusing. Most people know what a vicar is. So I'm a church leader. I'm a senior pastor. I am the one who is called to lead Stockton Parish Church, which I do. I share that with my bishop.
Yeah.
So the Church of England, we have the apostolic succession, which is one of the reasons that I'm part of the Church of England. Jesus put his hands on Peter, who put his hands on, who put his hands on, who put his hands on, who put his hands on me, and ordained me. And over the centuries, it's got broken, messed up, and a bit wobbly. But the concept that there's been apostolic succession since Jesus to Peter is really special. So I love my bishop. I'm happily obedient to my bishop in all things lawful and holy, and we share that ministry, which in practice means I do it, but I do it in communion and in partnership and under his authority.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I mentioned, obviously, I spent some time, it sounds like I was a visitor, but, it was a very important time.
You were there for a while, yeah.
Yeah, as, at Parish Church, and still got many friends, and, they kind of, attend and come along and are heavily involved, and, which is great. And, I do miss Stockton Parish Church. I do miss a lot of the people. It's like many things when as you can appreciate, when you get involved in church, you get involved in lots of different things, and you don't always have the time to maybe go back and visit or go visit some other people, because you just seem to be doing the stuff, bit church stuff, like you said. So, but obviously it's great to see from outside the church kind of developing as well. I know obviously you like many churches, we've gone had to go online, and so Embrace Church has gone online, and you've I know that you've invested heavily as a church, and it's great because you and we share a lot of the same values, don't we, Mr. Miller? Yeah.
We do,
and that's why we get on well, and then we have discussions and things, and and so we'll no doubt we'll get to those, but it's great to see somebody who's not part of SPC now, just to see just how great and professional it's looking, and more importantly, the importance of communicating the gospel and community that way. So how do you feel it's going? How's that kind of journey been over the last kind of lockdown periods and stuff like that? In briefly.
I saw a brilliant meme. This would be maybe around late April, May 2020. I saw this brilliant meme. It was a picture of Forrest Gump, and the word said, "And just like that, my pastor became a televangelist." And, that's exactly how it felt. We became producers of a TV show for a while because it was just one directional. Some church leaders did Zoom, and that's fact. I offer no judgment. The route we took was to do a pre-record, try and keep the quality good, not at the expense of authenticity. And maybe one of the values, maybe we'll chat about that a bit. But we want the quality to be good, because we don't want the quality to get in the way of people being able to share with their friends. Because people just, I think when it comes to online stuff, there is an expectation of a particular quality. You go to YouTube, and I do it. You see one that's been filmed poorly, you just skip over it, because there'll be another one that's been filmed really well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a huge amount. If you've got a bit of aptitude, it doesn't take a huge amount of skill to be able to learn to do that. We were really blessed. We had somebody in our church who had some time available to do that. And we were also able to get a bit of a grant as well. Because we're an old building, we were able to access a grant, which was quite a surprise and a great provision from God. So we've actually employed him now. So he's employed to produce all our video stuff. Yeah. So I think online it was going well. Face to face is where it's at. That's what we are as a church. Online, I think, will always have a role now. It's our shop window. Yeah. Most churches, and I imagine Embrace is the same, even though you don't have a building like we have a building, you can't see in. I always liken that if you go on holiday, i.e. a place you don't really know, and maybe you're looking for a restaurant or a place to eat, you don't go to the ones that are either A, empty, or B, upstairs, because you can't see what's upstairs. I don't know what I'm going up to. I'm not going to go in. Yeah. You go to the ones that look busy, and you can see what's happening. You can look in, you can see, oh, there's plenty of people there. That must be good. And so I think that's the church's shop window, because our building is a grand old building, but unless you go in, you can't see what's going on. Yeah. So I think for all churches, the online presence, at whatever level, at least lets you see what's going on.
Yeah. And you know, like I said, you're doing that really, really well. And I know that you've got a fantastic team of people, and you know, you've been able to employ some, and as well as the amazing volunteers that all give their time as part of their acts of worship. Really, isn't it? That's what we're talking about, serving. In a response to what God has done through His Son Jesus. You know, as a response to having that living, active relationship, personal relationship with God. In whatever that form of that worship looks like. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me and for Stockton Parish Church, when it comes to these values, I would always, so when we gather on a Sunday morning, we do it for three things. We worship God, we grow closer to Him, and then we go back out to change the world. Yeah. And for everybody, my primary desire for them is that they go and change the world in the place where they're at. So their home, their workplace, their college, their street, their community, their friendship group, they are Jesus wherever they are. Yeah. Secondly, I'd want them to take up some kind of, for those who are called to it, some sort of active ministry, changing the world in the place where they are, or the place they're called to. So that might be moving house into a street or a community or a context where actually we need a bit more presence of Jesus here. So we have an Eden team that live on Mill Lane. They're embedded. They are there to live alongside people who need to know about Jesus. In truth, everybody needs to know about Jesus. But we often don't want to go to the harder to reach places, and our Eden team does that. But we're trying to develop missional communities who will serve in all sorts of ways. Serve to a running club. Serve to literally people who like to eat burgers. Right, we don't have one in SPC, but there are missional communities that are based around eating burgers. Now, the point isn't that you get your church friends to eat burgers. The point is you get your church friends to eat burgers, invite your non-church friends, and talk about how great Jesus is whilst eating burgers. Who wouldn't want to be part of that?
Absolutely. I love it.
So it's the stuff outside of the building. I want people to be involved in that. And then I sort of say, finally, three things. But actually, we love to gather and to gather, to be together, to worship. Actually, that takes quite a lot of energy and effort. And folks, it would be great if those of you would serve, be a contributor to what we've got going on, not a consumer. Yeah. And there are ways to do that. You know, you serve one, you attend one, because I think it's important to be part of. If everyone is serving every single week, that's not so good either. And you and I have talked about that, Dave, over the year. To try and balance that, it's really important that we actually have some Sundays where we're sat receiving without guilt and without pressure, actually we're modeling something there as well, and we serve.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have had those discussions, you and I, about that. And, again, I've really valued your wisdom and insight in that, and being challenged on it, just taking some time, have your Sabbath time, kind of thing. Otherwise you burn out, and things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just want to take a moment just to say welcome to Philip, has joined us as well, and good friend Steve Whitehouse, who we both know. In fact, Steve's a member of and actively serves a lot with his wife Fiona and kids at SPSP.
Steve!
So, we're very, very happy to have you with us. Just again, want to encourage people just to comment and question, because we're going to get into, obviously, we've talked there about worship and gathering and the importance of that and whatever that. Often when people talk about worship, even though it is a lifestyle and worship can be many, many different things, acts, in different ways. Often when people talk about worship, that in a church context, they often talk about the music and the singing, which is a big part of, the service really, as well as hearing, obviously teaching and everything else, and ministry and things like that. So I just want to say as well that what you've been describing about your values for Stockton Parish Church, obviously it resonate a lot with Embrace Church, and we want to encourage the same thing now. So, like I said right at the very beginning, there's only one church. There's just different flavours of it, really, and we each have our own kind of styles, how we maybe present things, and the important thing is be part of the church. Obviously have that living relationship with Jesus personally, and meet with other people, believers, to support one another and do the stuff, not just in the building, like you said, Mark, but outside as well. Because people need to know Jesus. Need to be saved. Absolutely.
If coming to the building is the only thing you're doing, well, look, that's not bad, but you're missing the point.
Yeah.
We come to the building and everything we do there so that we go back out. That's the point. We go back out and be Jesus to the people around us.
Absolutely. We have 3 words which really kind of sum up our values and our missional kind of statement really at Embrace, which is to know God better, grow, to know in the first place, but to grow, and then the third one, which is go and do the stuff. Yeah, absolutely, which is totally the biblical, kind of approach and so on. Yeah. So, let's get, in terms of the worship side of things, I know obviously, and what this series is going to be around is people like yourself, Mark, and other friends I've got coming on the show that I'm really pleased that are from different churches and have agreed to kind of be part of it, who are all, are involved. Because I know that as a church leader, you're juggling an awful lot of responsibility. But let me just check. Do you still keep your hand in the musical side of things? Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You haven't given up completely. That's
good. No, you can see. Hang on, I can't do my fingers properly. You can see my beloved guitars. Oh gosh, that's quite hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's my beloved guitars behind me. I don't lead worship as much as I once did, but I think I led 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I'm probably not on for 2 or 3 months now, but with COVID, we've just this weekend, our worship leader for this week, well, it's Steve actually, our worship leader for this weekend can't do it because of COVID. He hasn't got COVID, he's having to isolate.
Yeah.
First time we've been hit with that, actually we just need to move the pieces around a little bit. So at some point I'll strap a bass drum on a couple of cymbals between my knees and we'll do everything on Sunday morning.
So let's get into talking about kind of your involvement then, and if you like values. You've talked about the values of the church and so on, but we want to talk about leading worship. You mentioned that phrase there, leading worship, and what that kind of means really. What I'm conscious of as well is that we try and keep these sessions kind of accessible, inclusive, because no doubt we have people, and we certainly encourage people who don't do the church thing to kind of join in and ask questions, and we certainly promoted Alpha and things like that. We wanted people to get in touch either with please after this or during Stockton Parish Church with Mark directly if you want to do that, or myself at Embrace Church. We'd love to hear from you, but we try and kind of keep it inclusive, and so we don't get into the churchy speak too much. So we need to just, without being patronising, we just need to make sure that we're clear on what we mean, and I fall into that trap so many different times really. So in terms of kind of involvement in worship teams, how did that come about? Obviously you're a musician. I clocked already in behind you. You've got your your line 6 Helix on the floor, just
Yeah,
strategically
you spotted
placed.
that, don't you?
Oh yeah, I clocked that straight away. You know, musicians
Yeah.
tend to do that. If we've
And
got,
you spotted my head rush amp.
yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just unfortunate we're not getting any sponsorship for these kind of things, because you name
Oh,
dropping
no.
there. I should have a lot of those. I should have a little honking sound. I might get one for next time. Every time somebody names a brand or something like that, or a famous name. So how did you get involved in, if you like, the musical aspects of worship in church then? What was the kind of, what's your history in that?
Well, I wonder if I can just briefly cover my testimony, because I think they're connected.
Please.
I moved to the Northeast when I was 14, I think, October, November 1984. Bear in mind, I'd gone from Scotland to the south of England, so I was bullied because I sounded different. My accent changed. Moved from the south to the north, I was bullied because my accent had changed. Joining school in the 4th year, halfway through the year, it was rotten. It was pretty horrible. And but as a 14, 15-year-old boy, I was interested in girls, but didn't quite know what to do about that. And my younger sister, so we weren't a church-going family. I went to Sunday school till I left Scotland.
Right.
But weren't really a church-going family at all. And my younger sister made friends with the family across the road. They were a church-going family. And their daughter invited my sister to join the local church youth group. This is in Middleton St. George. It's a village. So we're not talking like loads of people. Mm-hmm. And she joined the youth group. And the youth group would meet in each other's houses each week. Every Tuesday night was youth group night. And so this was now about 1985. I was 15. And Julie, it was time for the youth group to meet at our house. Julie met them at the door. And I watched 12 teenage girls walk into my house, and I thought, I don't care what this is, I'm joining it. Let me join this group, please, and just find out what. I don't care. I'm just joining this group.
Yeah.
And but what I discovered was, some pretty girls, and I had quite a longer-term girlfriend there. But our youth leader, a guy called John Linton, was just amazing and became the dearest friend. And he taught me about Jesus, and he taught me who Jesus is. And he taught me that Jesus isn't just a story, and that Jesus knows me, and Jesus forgives me, and that he loves me. And over the next couple of years, I started to explore that a bit more. And then in 1987, I think I'd probably been in 86, I can't quite remember, but in 1987, I went to Harvest at Whitton Castle, and I had never seen anything like it. So my church was an Anglican church. We call it middle of the road. So the traditional choir, liturgy, communion every week, lovely vicar, lovely guy, couldn't understand a word he was saying, but lovely. I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Music was largely dull and boring. And here we went to Harvest, and now there's a band. I grew up with my dad playing guitar. I can play guitar a little bit, but I grew up to listening to my dad playing Buddy Holly and Eddie Cochran on the guitar, and I liked music. Here was a band playing music that sounded a bit like the music I'd listened to, and an incredible preacher who spoke with passion. He spoke as if Jesus was real. With the passion that he had. Yeah. And I responded to an altar call, and that was the moment I gave my life to Jesus and was filled with God's Spirit in August 1987. And so in my youth group, we would sing music. It was Mission Praise. Mission Praise had just come out, and Mission Praise 2 had just come out, which had Shine Jesus Shine in it. And we would sing. In our youth group, we would sing. John would play guitar. I was learning, so I play a little bit. And we look back and it sounds really twee and cheesy, but it was transformational. Yeah. And we sang about God, to God, with passion. And then I kept on playing the guitar, and then fast forward quite a few years, we'd have the music group once a month, but it was always just, you got to sing a couple of songs in communion. I wasn't very patient, tolerant, or gracious. The Lord has done a lot of work in me. I've still more to go, but a few years later, different vicar. I'm quite a bit older now, can play the guitar quite a bit better now. And he asked me if I would develop a music group, which we did. And then we moved from the church building into the school hall because the church building was condemned. praise the Lord. Shackles came off, school hall. It changed everything. Still battles because most of the congregation didn't understand a kind of spirit-filled worship, a kind of free-form style of worship or music.
Yeah.
But I was leading worship 3 weeks out of 4 at that point, sometimes 4 weeks out of 4. Mostly hymn sandwich style, but with music that was more like the kind of music that I listened to, or that was contemporary in style.
Yeah.
And then after I was ordained, and I went to Stockton Parish Church, I went as the curate. That's Anglican speak for apprentice.
Yeah.
I just assumed I wouldn't be able to play anymore because I'd have to do vicary things. In fact, I never led as much worship because we didn't have the resources. We talked about a team that we have now and the great people we have now. We didn't have them.
Yeah.
And it was me. It was mostly me, a couple of others sort of supporting, but they were quite happy for me to take a lead. And so we just grew the team. Some of those were people who were attracted to the style of worship that SPC had. Others we grew from. One of our best worship leaders is, I talk about him a lot, is Bernam. He's from Iran. 7 years ago, when he came to this country, he couldn't speak English and didn't know which end of a guitar to blow into. Yeah. And now he's one of our most anointed, sensitive, beautiful worship leaders.
He's amazing. He's amazing.
Leading music on a guitar. I want to just give a shout out. Leading music on a guitar, Dave, that you gave him. So kind, gracious, and generous of you. That guitar is really precious to him, and he makes it sing. He changed the strings lately. It definitely sings.
That's useful. If that's the only time he's changed the strings since I gave him it.
No, move on.
Do you know that's actually funny because I found that guitar locally in a shop and I bought it and I thought, oh, this is a really nice guitar, but I just felt God say, yeah, but it's not for you. And I thought, oh, that's a shame because I really like this guitar. And it was a while before, and obviously I was at Stockton Parish Church and SPC then, and obviously getting to know Bernam and Benjamin and many others, and just they're amazing, and I just felt God say, that's the guy. Yeah. And I got I know you said that he treasured it. I got so much out of giving it to him that I remember it very clearly. Not a big showy thing. I did it to one side before church, and didn't want to make a big show kind of thing. But I get such, if I'm allowed, a good sense of pride when I've seen him in action, and to hear that, and it's not just because of the guitar, to see him grow, but he's actually using that to develop and build, his worship leading, and more than just that. It's a real honour, honestly, to play the little part of providing for that, so they're amazing. Well, and I really do miss them. I miss them, honestly.
They are those of you who don't know Bernam and Benjamin, they're identical twins from Iran. They're in their, I think, late 30s now, or mid to late 30s. They're just a joy to be around, and they're volunteer members of our staff team. So they join us for our staff meeting every Thursday. And we always begin our staff meetings with praise reports. We just go around the circle. Where have we seen God in action? What can we celebrate? And sometimes people are having a bad week. And we famously talk about, one of the praise reports was, I found peri-peri salt in the supermarket. One of our team members had said that. But actually they're looking for something good in the week. You come to Benjamin and Bernam and they'll say, oh, nothing much happened this week. Come on, you must have one. Well, I prayed for a guy's leg and it was healed, but it was just a small thing. Or we had a Zoom call with Iran and most of our family were there and they're asking questions about Jesus and one of them gave their lives to Jesus. It was just it wasn't a big week. These guys are just phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wish them well, will you, when your next time you see them for me. So obviously you covered quite a lot of your musical journey then, from learning and it's learning to play the guitar to impress girls is always a big motivation, I find, and I can relate to that. And and then obviously getting involved in teams, and it seems like you were on each week when you became there wasn't much of a team that you've talked about and so on.
Right.
You mentioned the classic "Shine, Jesus, Shine." Then so what were some of the other contemporary songs that you were doing? When you were kind of getting going and kind of
at the time. So lately, God's been reminding me of when Jesus said, "Seek first the kingdom of God."
Yeah.
And then that just seek ye first the kingdom of God and His and the chorus, Alleluia. So there's that. Rejoice, 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 rejoice. Christ is in you.
Absolutely.
Be bold, be strong for the Lord your God is with you. Yeah.
That's a great tune.
Gosh.
So these are basically the Mission Praise hits Mission Praise too. And then you mentioned Harvest, which is featured in a lot of people's stories, and it's again, 87 you were there. I went in 87 as well. Actually, that was the first one. I missed 88 because I was doing my GCSEs then, and then 89 onwards, and I had the privilege to be involved with Harvest for many years, in different roles and capacities in there. So, but like you, the music for me, bands, that were there, was just like, this is amazing. I mean, it was great to be with everybody else, and the speakers were fantastic. But I went for the bands, so Split Level and Eden Burning and lots of other ones.
Eden Burning were my absolute favourites. I've still got their CDs.
Yeah.
In fact, when I became a photographer and I had my website sorted, I wrote to is it Paul? I think was the leader of Eden Burning. He worked for Greenbelt at the time,
right?
And I said, "Look, can I put one of your songs on my website so when people come to it, I want them to hear?" And he gave me permission to do it. I just think Eden Burning were absolutely my favourite. Went to see them in concert up at Newcastle University.
Brilliant. I think I lost you there just for a moment. So just say that last part.
I went to see Eden Burning at Newcastle University. It was an absolute thrash fest.
I love it. Just want to put this on just because we're showing our age a little bit. Jill Jackson's joined us now, and I just want to add this. So she's, as you can see, come on, the tapes. Come on, we obviously we got the purists and was kind of showing our age there. Jill was also at the very first Harvest as well. I think she was already organising everything at Harvest at that point, and she continually does that really, really well. So, obviously you're a bit of a guitarist, you're a singer from what you said. I know a little bit of your history because you've mentioned this before, that it wasn't just the church music that you were doing. What about outside the church, Mr. Miller?
So I loved, for my 21st birthday, I got, I bought myself actually a Telecaster. So it was my first electric guitar. Joined a little band with my dad and my sister and one of his friends. We were called the Funkies. And nice. Our theme tune, "Hey, we're the Funkies. People say we're funking around." So I played that. Then I joined so some guys saw us playing in the local pub, and we were just a fun band. We played, I don't know, 3 times, 4 times a year.
Yeah.
And then they invited me to join their band as singer and guitar player, and we had a lot of fun there. And then one of the guys in that band then became my sister's husband, and so we formed a duo, and we were able to get quite a lot of work. We played at weddings and functions as a duo, playing to some backing tracks. And then we thought, well, we've got this duo that's really good. We've got a band that can really entertain people. Let's make it a full band. So we recruited some other musicians. So we were called the Fantastic Shirts. We'd wear really jazzy shirts, and we had the Fantastic Shirts band. And for a moment, we were debating: do we go full time with this in the kind of professional wedding party band circuit? We got booked for a gig. We'd played at a wedding. We tried to play nationally. We got booked for a wedding in Oxford. Somebody there was the entertainment manager for some company. They got our number because the band that they had booked for a big conference at the Birmingham NEC had cancelled at the last minute. So they got us down. This was the first time we'd actually got asked, can we have your rider? And for those who don't know, your rider is the list of things that you need as a musician. Famously, you know, like Mariah Carey wants her dressing room decorated in white with only white M&Ms or something like that. And I phoned the guys up. We've been asked for a rider. What can we put on it? We don't want to look like idiots. What do we put on it? And so we said, well, we want sandwiches and some drinks and a mirror, because we thought because we were used to getting changed in the toilets.
Yeah.
And so we just needed to make sure we had a mirror to make sure. Well, they went out and bought a mirror for us. So that we had this. And that was the first taste of what you might think of as the kind of big time for a party band.
Yeah.
We played to 400 or 500 people that night. It was banging. It was amazing. And so we debated going full time, but actually in the end, it just didn't quite work. It was a little bit like, I guess it was a little bit like babysitting 4 adults. It wasn't. Oh, here's Frankie, my cat. And I got the job working overseas, and so that was the end of the band. Right. And it was a great ride, and it was great fun, and I've got great memories. Yeah. But I don't miss finishing at 4 o'clock on a Saturday morning, moving 2 tons of kit back into the van.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't miss that at all.
I've got a question from Mike here for you. You know, obviously you've come from the fantastic shirts. He's just wondering if it's the new funky waistcoats now, because obviously we see you like your normal attire.
So in SPC on a Sunday morning, normally have a clerical shirt on and I wear a waistcoat. I think I look rather smart. And can I just say, I was wearing it before Gareth Southgate was wearing it.
Yeah.
At whatever the last big football thing was. Yeah. He didn't wear it for the Euros. But the last big thing he was wearing, I was wearing it before him.
Yeah, that's clearly, obviously we know you're a trendsetter, absolutely. So, let's take your musical experience then, about being part of a team then. So, obviously it is about actors. I'm just interested in what you talked about SPC's values, and they're obviously the overarching kind of values of your church community and what you're seeking to, I don't want to say achieve, but, pushing forward and living out, what do you think is important in terms of it when people are part of a worship team then? Because I'm going to speak for myself here, I'm a musician, an artist, and I've got ginger hair, so I can be a little bit temperamental, and so it's really important, like in any team, you've got dynamics of and what the expectations are. What do you, from your point of view, think are important, if you like, to how you can serve the church effectively as part of the worship team then? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dave. And so I wonder if the couple of thoughts that spring to mind. We place quite a high value on people who are on the platform. We tend to use the phrase platform rather than stage. I don't get too hung up on it, but a stage you perform on. Yeah. A platform is there just so people can see and can better engage. And perhaps that speaks to some of our values as well. Yeah. So people up there, my expectation is we are modeling what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And so with all of these things, I go back to, well, how did Jesus model? In fact, I preached on this just the weekend. What would be one of the key examples of how Jesus showed us what it means to be fully human? And if you look at the Thursday night, Maundy Thursday, the Last Supper, John's Gospel, chapter 13, it's brilliantly written. It's like bullet time, where Jesus, his friends are there, and he does something incredible. He takes off his outer garments, wraps a towel around his waist, and if you read it, I think it's from verse 4 and verse 5 in chapter 13. I'm not really clever. It's just because I've just preached on this. That's why I know it. And John describes the water being poured, and the kneeling down and the washing feet. It's like bullet time. Slows down. You just imagine what was happening there. But what John doesn't comment on, but Luke comments on, is just before that, the disciples are all having an argument about who's the greatest. For 3 years, they've been following the Son of God, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the Lion and the Lamb. They've been following him. He's shown them so many times what it means to be a follower of his. And for me, it's a bit like, it's like the face palm emoji. You know, the disciples start saying, well, which one of us is the greatest? Craig Groeschel talks about this. He's a great preacher in America. He says, maybe John was saying, hey, well, I'm the disciple that Jesus loved, so surely I'm the greatest. Peter would go, hey, no, it's me. I walked on the water. To which the other disciples say, Peter, you sank when you walked on the water. And then Bartholomew says, well, what about me? To which the others go, sorry, who are you? Because poor Bartholomew, of course, no one remembers. So these guys are arguing about who is the greatest, and then Jesus shows them what it is to be the greatest. He says nothing. He takes off his outer garment, wraps a towel around his waist, and he washes their feet, which isn't a symbolic thing. It was a very practical thing, but it was something that was done by the lowest status person in the house, lowest status servant or even a slave. Jesus, the greatest human ever, he does this. That's the attitude we should always have as followers of his. And even more so when we might be in some metaphorical spotlight because we're up there doing the stuff. And in the world's view, when you're up there on a stage doing that stuff, you are given status. And we need to, as worship musicians, we need to resist that or point to Jesus in everything we do, or kind of both. Matt Redman. So the other thought I've got is, you may know this. I think, Dave, you probably do know this story, but I don't know if anybody listening knows this story. When Matt Redman when he was an up-and-coming young worship leader, he was part of Soul Survivor. Mike Pilavachi was his pastor. And Matt really didn't want any limelight. The story goes that on the night he was due to lead worship, he was stamping on his clothes to make sure they weren't too nice looking. And he led worship, and Mike wanted to honor Matt and everything that Matt had brought that night. And so as the worship finishes, or the music finishes, he sort of speaks to the assembled, and he says, look, let's give a round of applause to say thank you to Mr. Matt Redman. Turn around, Matt had left the platform. He'd gone. He wanted none of that. Yeah. And so there's something in that about the humility and the servant-hearted nature. I think our job as worship musicians is to lead people into the presence of God and then get out of the way. And so we have to be careful about the things we say, the things we do. We lead them into the presence of God and leave them there whilst we either join them or get out of the way. But we certainly don't want to be in the way of what God is doing with them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's excellent. And again, no surprise that I totally agree with everything that you said there, and really, couldn't agree more. Like I say,
Dave, let me say, Dave, that's it's hard, particularly when. And I know you're the same as me. We've been in show bands. We've been in party bands. That's different.
It is.
We're there to entertain. And so the stage presence and the engagement with the audience, using that word, there's a different dynamic that takes place. And so it's sometimes very hard or it's important to remember that's not what I'm there for now. But equally, you don't want to be so stiff, dull, and boring that people can't engage. There's a balance to be struck between engaging and, like I say, bringing people into the presence of God, leading them there, then getting out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's not an easy one. I totally agree, and it is trying to get that balance right. And I think that's so important that as part of a team, you have that relationship with people, certainly the leadership of the church, to have that strength of relationship where there's an honesty and accountability in that as well. I would absolutely encourage everybody to do that. And we certainly we don't want divas in worship teams. It's too. I've had my diva moments, many of them, and and again, I'm thankful for my friends who have kind of had a word with me and things, lovingly, and I can recount. Just some of them are flashing back now, but we haven't got time to go through them all. But it's important, that, like you said, to listen. If you're not willing to. And another big shout out to Benjamin and Burnham, about this, because I know that they do this. If you're not willing to clean the church in a practical way, away from the limelight, from the spotlight and the platform, then again, then really should you be given that opportunity, and to be in front of everybody else like that. Again, that's again, huge respect for Burnham and Benjamin, and many others in other churches that do that as well.
Yeah. I hope you hear this. I hope people hear this with some humility. I don't want to show off, but I do want to try and demonstrate some modeling. And it was a couple of years or so ago, the Lord spoke to me about that passage from John 13 about the washing of feet. That's a culturally relevant thing. We don't need to wash people's feet now. We have shoes, socks, tarmac roads, access to soap and running water. We really don't need to wash people's feet these days. But there's something in there about being on your knees. And who is the lowliest servant in our society? And I think possibly it's those who clean, what one might argue, or I don't want to kind of label anybody, but I think typically the lowest paid in any organization would be those who clean. And so I felt the Lord really speak to me about the leadership in our church, and in particular, that's our staff team, many of whom are volunteers, and indeed our PCC, our church council. And I'd said, I think we should be cleaning the church here. It's a way of washing the feet of the people who come here. If we don't clean the toilets and we expect somebody else to do it, that says something about who we are. And so it's been, just for logistical reasons, it's been difficult for the church council to be involved in that. I maybe need to revisit that actually now I brought it up. But the staff team, every Thursday when we have our staff meeting, part of our prayer is cleaning the toilets, cleaning the kitchen, straightening the chairs, emptying the bins. We don't have a cleaning staff. We do it because that's a way of serving the church.
Absolutely.
And if anybody ever thought that was beneath them, we'd have some questions about character there.
Yeah.
Should you have a place on the platform if that's beneath you? And we don't. We don't at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's amazing, and again, we can all be inspired by that and learn from that, definitely. And like you said, character is so important, and again, we want to reflect Jesus as much as possible in whatever we're doing, and so that's important that we get the right kingdom perspective on what we're doing. Absolutely. I'm just conscious of the time, and it's going really, really quickly as I expected to. We don't get anywhere near as much as we've kind of prepared for through, because we just end up chatting.
Folks, just like Dave sent me a whole list of subjects. I think we've done one.
Yeah. I thought that'd be the case. Okay, I've just thought of this one really, which let's do the kind of worship desert island discs kind of thing. All right, so I want your top 3 to put you on the spot. All time worship tracks that have really, and this is such a tough question, impacted you, maybe reflected a season of where you've been personally, or even the church as well, because maybe that, because what I do see, and I say this quite often, is I don't see the role of worship leader as a specific role in the Bible. I see lots of worshippers and those leading by example in their lifestyles, absolutely. But I do see pastoring, that pastoral role, and I believe that worship leading or worship pastor is a role as part of that pastoral kind of role. So I've given you about 30 seconds worth of thinking time there as I'm kind of leading into this. So go on, see if you can do a top 3 or whatever. I'm just interested what songs are just, for whatever reason, maybe on a personal level, just help you connect and focus on God.
Yeah. So it's such a hard question. I find music and musical worship one of the best ways that I can connect with God. Yeah. And actually, I want to say that now because I think sometimes people feel a little bit guilty because they look at others and go, oh, well, they always connect with God when they read Scripture. Of course, Scripture is really important, and look, I'm an evangelical, right? Okay, so Scripture's key. Or I love it in moments of silence, and that's great as well. I love music, and I connect with God, and I most typically will hear God either in silence or through music. So music's really, really special, and I love worship music. Most of my music that I listen to is worship and Bruce Springsteen. I have to be careful not to worship Bruce Springsteen.
Yes. I was wondering if you get through the whole episode without you mentioning Bruce.
There's no way. You mentioned musical taste, so Bruce is coming in. That's why I've got that Telecaster up there. Yeah. Okay, so some of the significant. Let me try and Splendor of the King. How Great Is Our God.
Yeah.
That was a really special song when I heard that, because it's so easy to play, so easy to sing, and so utterly, utterly beautiful. When I really started to have a role within my, before I was ordained, the church I was in, and I would lead Alpha. And I wanted to lead Alpha by the book, which meant we had music every week. We did the whole weekend away, and I didn't have a musician to take. It was me. And it was probably one of the first contemporary worship songs I could play without music and without looking at the words. And that was really, to be able to do that is really free. I find it quite hard to do.
Yeah.
And it's a song that actually has never got old, never has got tired. And you can drop the chorus in all sorts of places. And it's the most incredible chorus to sing a cappella, unaccompanied.
Yeah.
And those of us who lead worship, having a chorus like that you can go to, you can drop it in, and then the whole atmosphere changes when you drop the instruments down, and it's just the voices.
Yeah.
So Splendor of the King would be up there. Interestingly, I hadn't realized this till recently, written by Ed Cash. He and his son and his daughter and his brother have a brilliant band called We the Kingdom. And so I just want to give a little shout out, not that they're going to listen, but let me just encourage you folks, check out We the Kingdom. They have, they've only really got one album. They've done a couple of versions of it, and they've got some brilliant versions of their song on YouTube. One of them is called Holy Water. They do a great version with Tasha Cobbs-Leonard, which is stunningly, stunningly good. So check out We the King. I don't think that many songs for singing within the church, probably. So there's that one. So that was really significant. Probably the next song I would choose. Gosh, there's so many I could choose.
So that's 2 of the 3.
Oh, well, that wasn't 2. I was off at a tangent with the second one. It was only Splendor of the King.
Just because it's you.
Okay. The next one, Bethel. Oh, God, I Look to You from Bethel. One of the key songs when I came to Stockton Parish Church, one of our staff prayer times. I'd never even heard of Bethel. Didn't know who Bethel were. And I heard this song. I thought, oh. And so that became a regular feature. God, I Look to You. Yeah. Terrific lyrics, terrific songs, and introduced me to Bethel. And then let me try and pick a song from more recent times. Who You Say I Am by Hillsong. If I only had one sermon, it would be... and there's actually a few songs that feature this. It's that I'm a child of God. Yeah. You're a child of God. When we know who we are, everything changes. When we understand who we are and whose we are, everything changes. Absolutely. And so Who You Say I Am, which of course, Dave, is in the greatest of all time signatures, which is
6/8.
6/8. It's in 6/8.
That's why as soon as you said it, I started smiling, because I was just transported back to, I wonder if he's going to, the 6/8 conversations that we've had, and obviously the way you play, bashing out that, your guitar, it was a constant joke between ourselves about the fan of 6/8 timing, which is great, but absolutely agree. It's an immense song.
It's just stunningly good. Yeah.
I don't know if I can call this section, I want to do this quite regularly with people, worship bangers. Can we call them bangers?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My sister, who I mentioned earlier, she had a little health scare. She's fine. She had a little health scare and was in hospital for a few days. And I haven't done this for years. I made her a mixtape on Apple Music. So she just texts her a mixtape now. And I called it, brackets, mostly worship bangers for Julie. And it was some of my favourite worship bangers. But I wanted to do 10, ended up with 20 songs, which of course has Maverick City worship in it. Everyone's listening to Maverick City at the moment.
Nice one. I think everybody can appreciate that. Do you know what? I'm stunned by the lack of questions that's coming tonight, because I think everybody's just so enjoying, everything that we've been saying and whatever. Not that they've, maybe, unless they've tuned out. Oh no, we still got people watching. That's okay.
Have I not just bored everybody?
No. I don't think so. No, because certainly the people I can see that have made comments and so on, they are always very keen to put comments in there. So I think there's just obviously, as we kind of look to kind of wrap up for this evening, I think there is just so much we could talk about in terms of that worship leading, and so many different aspects to it, and what I'm thinking as we've been going through, because you quite rightly said we've as a through across some areas that we could talk, and we've only covered maybe one, maybe two at the most, really, out of about 8 I suggested. So I might kind of like over the series pause other ones to other worship leaders, kind of, but we'll see how we kind of get on. But I think that there is just so much to it, and kingdom values, values in terms of leadership as well, humility, everything that we talked about. Obviously you talked about the values you have as Stockton Parish Church, which certainly we can totally agree with in terms of embrace, because why? They're biblical values. We see it modelled. You've talked about Jesus being the perfect model, and he's the perfect theology, obviously, and all of that. So we kind of really want to encourage in these we want to be practical. So that's going to be your last question. I'm going to throw this. One practical tip you would give to somebody who's kind of starting out in a worship team. All right, so I'm going to talk for a little bit, and then we're going to hand over to you just to kind of quick answer on that. So obviously we want these sessions to be inclusive. So like I said, they're not just for musicians only, or even drummers, so musicians and drummers. You had to get a drummer joke in there. But obviously the importance of serving, worship is a lifestyle, importance of serving the church effectively, being humble, having good character in all of that, reflecting Jesus and where we do, whatever we're doing, and the absolute amazing gift that God gives us of music, okay, and it's such a powerful experience when people come together and sing and express, or even make a joyful noise, even if you don't feel you can sing. It's okay. The Holy Spirit auto-tunes our worship anyway. That's okay. So when we belt it out from a heartfelt cry of our prayers set to music, there's such a power in that as we connect with heaven, and heaven comes down through the Holy Spirit and everything that goes on. So it's a real privilege to be part of a worship team, and to get that balance right, which we're all still working on, of leading and taking that responsibility seriously, and integrity is important in all of that, but leading, and then knowing when to step aside, like you said, Mark, to let those gathered, the congregation, or whatever you want to call them. We're not going to call them an audience, because it's not a passive thing, it's an active thing. Everybody's involved. And we're not just there to entertain, but it's as we join together, it's just kind of as the worship leader stepping out and just shutting up, and just let the saints, let those gathered sing out their praises. Honestly, it never fails to kind of make me feel emotional, and I'm so blessed by all of that, and thank God all of the time for the gifts He's given and the opportunities He's provided in many different ways for me to kind of use the gifts that He's given. Anyway. So that's a lot of me rambling on to give you enough thinking time. So what's going to be your major tip, Mr. Miller?
My major tip is it's a discipleship matter, and it should be the same for all of us. And that is, it's words of Jesus: "Let your yes be a yes." And what I mean by that is when you say, "Yes, I am free to play this Sunday." So you've been invited onto the worship team. Yes, I'm free to play this Sunday. That means that you will have learnt your parts. That means that you will be there early, because if you're there on time, you're probably late. You need to be there early to set up, to make sure your equipment's set up. Let your yes be a yes means you are part of the team. You are not it. And let your yes be a yes means you're part of the team, which means you help pack away afterwards. So I guess I've tried to cover a few things in there about being humble about how you approach it, because you're a beautiful, valued part of the team, and it will only work when you kind of slot in and you play your part. So let your yes be a yes in all of those ways.
I think that's a great tip, and again, it's no surprise. I wanted a bit of an argument and discussion and debate, but as always, it's almost you're saying the things that as I expected, that I value a lot, and we might differ on little tiny bits. So that's good, because it's always but generally speaking, I think that's a great tip, and that's honouring God and honouring the team and everybody else, really, isn't it? Part of being a church. And I can see, and we've talked about him a couple of times already, and there's Mr. Steve Whitehouse saying a big yes to that, and even though despite his restricted this weekend, it seems, by having to isolate, which is, but he would be there. I know Steve, and I know that, and so there's another guy, Mike Connolly, on screen, who's also amazing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And these are guys. I'm just honour the two of you. These are guys who let their yes be a yes.
Yeah.
In all of those ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, I have absolutely thoroughly enjoyed you being part of Embrace Live. I'm sure everybody else has, and hopefully it's been okay. Have you enjoyed it?
It has been absolute delight, Dave. Absolute joy. A bit like you saying, you were hoping for a bit of an argument or maybe a bit of a discussion. I wasn't at all. But you've added so much to this, and you have brought in, right from the beginning, we talk about worship and we often think about music. It's a whole life. Worship is our whole life. When you wake up in the morning, you begin worshiping.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes that will include singing.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, everybody, just have a look online. Check out, get in touch with Stockton Parish Church, get in touch with Mark if you want to know more about the amazing things that they do, and not just in terms of the worship and music. So many different ministries. The Eden Project that are involved in is amazing. I actually started teaching in Mill Lane many moons ago, 1996, when I qualified, and actually I do teach there a day a week as well, so it's great to be back in there at the moment as well. So but that Mill Lane is an example of an area that has lots, shall we say, of challenges, of lots of people, well, lots of areas. Everybody needs Jesus, but that's amazing. So if you want to find out more about the Eden Project in particular, and many other things that the church do, I can highly recommend Stockton Parish Church, and I say that outside of these episodes, and not just because Miller the Vicar's on the screen. All right, so lots of great people, over there. I've told you how much I miss them, and bless you, mate. You're an amazing, leader. You're an amazing friend. You're an okay musician, and your waistcoats are fantastic. Oh no, your shirts are. But again, all of that. Just bless you and the team and the family over at Stockton Parish Church.
Thanks,
Bless
Dave.
you,
Right back at you. Right back at you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to head over to here just to say that if you do want to find out more about, not only Stockton Parish Church, and we can happily put you in touch with them, but also about Embrace Church, which I'm a member of, then please just head over to our website. You can also follow us, obviously, on our social media channels, on Facebook, on our YouTube channel. This video will be going up onto YouTube very soon afterwards, so you can share it for those people who don't use the Facebook thing, and obviously if you want to follow us on Twitter and things like that as well. So if you not doing anything next Wednesday night, hopefully you want to put in, we'll have another guest coming on, another at 8 o'clock next Wednesday, another person from outside of Embrace who's a worship leader, and we'll talk about maybe some of those other areas that we didn't get to with Mark, because I basically rattled on too much about that. But it's been great that you've been joining us. Stay tuned next week then. Thank you. Bye bye.